Good evening, everybody. We'll start with today's session. So, we have learned regarding the chapter susceptibility, and 3 lectures we have discussed regarding the susceptibility. Susceptibility, Kent has tried his level best to explain. Little bit concepts were difficult to understand if we go directly with word by word. But if we understand what is susceptibility, then it becomes rather simple to take note about it. And that's what we have done in last 3 lectures. We have understood what Kent wants to say and what message he wants to transfer to you. So we have finished of understanding how the susceptibility one can judge, what type of susceptibility is there in the acute cases, and what type of susceptibility is there with the chronic cases, and accordingly how to deal with the potencies. And 2 rules which I have mentioned many times: higher the susceptibility, higher the potency, less the repetition, and lower the potency, lower the susceptibility, lower the potency, repetition till the susceptibility gets satisfied. So these 2 things which we have discussed in detail. Today we're going to start with chapter number 15, the protection from sickness. So we'll start with this chapter. It is related with the aphorism 35 onwards. So he starts explaining about it in this chapter. Name of the chapter is Protection from Sickness. Chapter 15, Protection from Sickness. Organon, aphorism 35. From these paragraphs, we see that there are several kinds of protection from the sickness. When a violent epidemic is raging, we all know that although the number of victims is large, they are few compared to those who go through the epidemic unscathed. And the question arises, why is it? We suppose, and probably rightly so, that large number of the immune have escaped because they were unusually strong and vigorous, and are in a state of very good order. But we find among those who have escaped the epidemic a number of persons who are anything but strong, really invalids. One in consumption, another in last stages of Bright's disease, another with the diabetes. So he is explaining now. Hahnemann have started explaining about 2 important things. You want to explain the scientific concept behind the why allopathy, how allopathy works, why it never cures, why it only palliates, or why it produces complex. So what happens when 2 dissimilar diseases meets inside one human being? And that concept he tried to explain over here. The Kent has started explaining about that. Many times epidemic happens, and during epidemic, it depends upon the vigorousness of the acute miasm, and still many people escapes from that epidemic. They escape because first important thing you can explain that they are having vigorous strength, their immune system is normal and healthy, and their vital force is not allowing the acute miasm to enter inside the body, and they never suffer. That is the one valid reason is there. But question arises, those persons who are invalid, for example, those persons who are already having consumption. Consumption word here comes for tuberculosis. Wherever consumption words comes in the homeopathy, whether it is in philosophy, whether it is in the repertory or in materia medica, it is direct translation of the Marathi word Kshay Rog, consumption Kshay, that is tuberculosis. And that's why it is called to be a tuberculosis. Why it is so? It is because this disease has the capacity to reduce the weight of the person. It reduces person day by day. It consumes the energy of the human being, and that's why it is called as consumption. So if the person who is having tuberculosis, or if a person who is having the Bright's disease, that is glomerulonephritis, and they are strong victims of them, and still they never suffer. So this is what he is explaining. But we find among those who have escaped the epidemic a number of persons who are anything but strong, really invalids, one in consumption, another in last stages of Bright's disease. Bright's disease is nothing but the glomerulonephritis. Yes, consumption and thesis both were the old words for tuberculosis. Yes. Bright's disease is also old word for the glomerulonephritis. Another with diabetes. We call them all together and we find that none of them have had a dysentery or smallpox or whatever disease was epidemic. They have not been susceptible to the epidemic influences. How are you going to explain this? The reason is that they have a sickness that it is impossible for the epidemic to suppress. So here Hahnemann's first concept comes. Hahnemann have explained the scientifically when two dissimilar diseases meets inside one human being, if older one is strong, it repels the new one to enter inside the body. And this is the reason. That's why the new disease never comes. Because old one is stronger. Now he has correlated with it with the allopathic medicine. Because allopathic medicine is dissimilar to the patient complaints. So if the patient who is suffering from the tuberculosis and if you are giving a dissimilar remedy, not having any relation and which is not stronger enough than the tuberculosis, then there will be no action of the medicine. So if you give any antibiotic, it never works in tuberculosis because tuberculosis is stronger, so it repels the new weaker one. This concept Hahnemann wants to explain that in allopathy, the first thing happens either there is no reaction or there is absolutely nothing happens after giving allopathic medicine because it is dissimilar and not stronger than the disease. That is the first reason he wants to explain over there. The reason is that they have sickness that it is impossible for epidemic to suppress. The epidemic is allopathic or dissimilar to their diseases and cannot suppress their disease because of its virulence. Now, if they have some mild form of chronic disease, a severe attack of dysentery will cause that disease to disappear temporarily and a new epidemic disease will take hold and run its course. And when it subsides, the old one will come back again and go on as if they had not been meddled with. So this is the second thing which Hahnemann have explained regarding dissimilarity. When two dissimilar diseases meets inside one human being, if older one is weaker and newer one is stronger, the newer one suspends the older one for time being. It runs its own course, and when its course is finished, it disappears and old one reappears and runs its course. So this is what the common thing which happens in the allopathy. The allopathic medicine, which is stronger than the natural disease, will take a simple example of a rheumatism or asthma. A patient who is suffering from asthma, he takes a bronchodilator, a dissimilar, because patient's complaints are different and medicinal action or medicine doesn't have that symptoms, and still you use that. So medicine is stronger than the asthma. So immediately after taking that tablets or those sprays, patient feels better. It suspends the older one, that is the natural disease. And when the action disappears after 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, depending upon the action of that medicine, the original disorder reappears. So this is the common thing which we used to get in allopathic practice. Whenever they deals with the chronic diseases, this is the common thing. So rheumatoid arthritis patient takes painkiller for 8 hours, 12 hours, he feels better because dissimilar medicine, which is stronger than the older one, natural disease, temporarily relieves, and when its action is over, the original disease comes up. For that purpose, he is explaining what happens in the nature. So first proposition in the nature is that when two dissimilar diseases mix inside one human being, if older one is stronger, it repels the new one to enter. Second proposition is that when two dissimilar diseases mix inside one human being, inside one human being in natural shape, at that time, if older one is weaker than the stronger one. The stronger one suspects older one for time being. It runs its course, and when its action is vanished, then older one reappears. That is the second proposition, and that's what he is explaining over there. This is an illustration of dissimilars and shows that dissimilars are unable to cure. They can only suppress. And this is the reason why he has explained all those things. Dissimilarity, with the question of dissimilarity or with the principle of dissimilarity, there is no principle, but with the concept of dissimilarity, there is no cure happens. It either palliates, it either suppresses. That's all. If the chronic disease is stronger than the epidemic disease, that is, if it has an organic hold upon the body, it cannot be suppressed. This is essentially in relation of the acute dissimilar disease to the chronic disease of severity. The relation between chronic dissimilar disease is somewhat different. For example, patient is in earlier stages of Bright's disease and the symptoms are clear enough to make a diagnosis. He takes syphilis and at once the kidney disease is held in abeyance. The albumin disappears from the urine, his vaccinus is lost, but after years careful prescribing, the syphilitic state disappears and very soon albumin reappears again in the urine and the dropsy return and he dies of ordinary attacks of Bright's disease. He is explaining the example of a second proposition. If patient is suffering from the Bright's disease, if there happens to be a syphilis, then temporarily the symptoms of Bright's disease gets vanished. Patient is absolutely normal regarding kidney complaints. Syphilis runs its course, and when if you treat that syphilis with medicines, local application or anything, the syphilitic eruption disappears. Then original Bright's disease comes back in an aggravated form, and patient ultimately suffers with the Bright's disease, ultimately dies with the Bright's disease. So he has explained clear example of second proposition of the dissimilarity. And this is what happens when you treat the patients with the dissimilar method or concepts of dissimilar. Then there are cases where two chronic diseases seems at times to alternate with each other. One seems to be subdued for some time, for a time, and other prevails. Under proper homeopathic treatment, one will be reduced in its activity and the other chronic disease will show itself. This you will find to be the case when you have to treat syphilis and SORA together. The SORA patient, the psoric patient who has been suffering from skin eruption or one of the various forms of SORA takes syphilis. All the psoric manifestations, the nightly itching of the salt stream will disappear and the syphilitic eruptions will come on and take their place. You will treat the syphilitic manifestations for a while and you will be able to subdue them. And in proportion as the disease is subdued, the psoric manifestations will come up again and will hold in abeyance for that portion of the syphilitic states that will still uncured. You will then be compelled to drop the antisyphilitic and take up the antisoric treatment. And again, the homeopathic remedies will restore apparent order in the economy. But after this has been done, you'll be surprised to see syphilitic state return in conditions corresponding to its last manifestation. You must then drop the antisoric treatment and resume the antisyphilitic. Thus, they alternate. When you weaken one, the stronger comes up. The uncomplicated syphilitic eruptions does not itch, but the psoric eruptions as a rule is an itching eruption. And this will be seen in alternation of the two diseases. And he is explaining one more example of it. If the patient who is suffering from the psoric eruptions and he grabs the syphilitic, the psoric manifestations disappear. If you treat the syphilis with the again with the remedy, the syphilitic disorder disappears, the original psoric manifestations comes up. And this happens if you don't take into consideration the whole thing. And with homeopathy also, if you find it out only a superficial remedy, that remedy will work for that state only. One state disappears, the original comes up. If you try to treat the original one, the new one comes up. And this alternates because the state is alternating state. Here you have to find it out a remedy which covers the whole aspect of the case. Then you can treat that with the help of a proper remedy. Otherwise, you're going to find it out this alternating symptoms, even though you give the homeopathy with the superficial aspect. Second important thing, if you treat them with the allopathy, the same thing will going to happen. At a certain place, it will happen that the patient will suffer from both the diseases at a time. He will have the psoric manifestations along with the syphilitic manifestation. So primary syphilis along with the psoric manifestation. So patient enters into the complications that is called as double complex disease, labeled by the modern science as the secondary syphilis, where it never remains only syphilis, but it is mixed with the sora. So secondary syphilis. So if the patient is given proper treatment, his condition will be simplified. But if given old school treatment, it will become very complicated. The two miasms will unite and form a complexity, which is the most vicious state of the affairs. Then the syphilitic eruptions, while they have all appearances of the syphilis, will each as if they were psoric eruption. Mercury in large doses is capable of bringing about such a result. Proper homeopathic treatment causes a separation, while inappropriate treatment produces a complication. And you will never see one improve where homeopathic remedies have caused the tying up of the combination. So if you treat such a disorder, syphilis with the allopathy, now the treatments are varied, but earlier phase during Hahnemannian time, the local application of mercurial preparation was the treatment. That's why in your materia medica you get one sentence: bad effects of mercury in many medicines. That bad effects of mercury means mercurial preparations suppressing the syphilis, primary syphilitic eruption, that is primary chancre. So if you try to suppress that primary chancre, then generally it goes temporarily, patient is relieved, and then again, when it reappears, he comes out not only with the primary chancre, along with the psoric manifestations, that is maculopapular rash, the condylometallata. So the modern science label it as a secondary syphilis. With homeopathy, we consider that now it never retains the simple case of syphilitic miasm. Now the sora is complicated with syphilis. Now, psychosis is complicated with syphilis because condylometallata is a manifestation of psychotic mind, and this becomes a complex disease. So, if you try to treat those disorders with the help of allopathic medicines, the complex is always formed, and when complex is formed, it used to produce a problem for the patient. So, these three conditions are there. When first condition is that when two dissimilar diseases meets inside one human being, if older one is stronger, it repels the new one to enter. Second condition is that if two dissimilar diseases meets inside one human being, if older one is weaker and newer one is stronger, newer one suspends the older one for time being. The new one runs its course. When it finishes its course, the older one reappears. And third condition is that when two dissimilar diseases of equal strength meets inside one human being, they appears at two different places in one human being as a complex, or they themselves remains along with formation of new disease, that is called as double complex disease, and that is the third condition which happens. With allopathy, this is third condition which is commonly appears nowadays. Patient who is suffering from certain disorder already, he takes the allopathic medicine. So for example, patient who is suffering from diabetes, suffering from the rheumatoid arthritis, patient takes on steroids, and patient is temporarily feeling better, again develops, and he goes on taking the steroids. So now there is diabetes remains over there along with rheumatoid arthritis remains over there along with formation of a diabetes, formation of a avian. So patient now develops the double complex disease, that is the third condition, and this is the common thing which happens in allopathic practice. So three conditions which develops in dissimilarity, and that's why Hahnemann explained those three natural conditions, and he tried to explain the scientificity behind that. Dissimilar diseases never cures. Dissimilar diseases either palliates or either suppresses, producing the in grave internal disorder. So this thing he wants to focus on you with the help of these three propositions which happens to be there in the nature. And what he says further, again take a chronic malarial diathesis. He gives one more example. Again take a chronic malarial diathesis which has existed so long that it has complicated itself with sora. We'll see after quinine has been antidoted that the chills and fever will come back in their original form. Here you see an evidence of separation which homeopathy always tends to bring about. The malarial state is now brought into observation for the purpose of cure. It cannot be cured when complicated, for remedy cannot be clear that will be similar enough to wipe them out. The first prescription antidotes the drug and liberates the patient from the drug diseases, and then you see the most acute and last appearing natural disease which comes back first, and this is in accordance with the fixed law. The last miasm or the last symptom that have been made to disappear will be the first to return and go away and go away to appear no more. So here he explains one more thing, that if you treat a quinine with the help of if you treat the malarial diathesis with the quinine, what will happen? Temporarily patient will settle. You feel that chill has stopped, patient is cured. No, you wait for some time and you will find that this fellow may enter into a complicated form. I have seen that many patients who develop many grave disorders after suppression of this malaria with the help of quinine. These things are quite common in day-to-day practice, and you will find that many hazardous internal disorders which are the results of suppression because of quinine. I think I have shared one case with you that leukemia developed after the suppression of falciparum malaria. And when we started homeopathy, when hopes are lost, and when we started the homeopathy, after giving proper homeopathic remedy, I have given him, I think so, um, Barata iodide to that patient. And after giving Barata iodide, that his count disappeared from 2,31,000 to 3,400 within span of 4 per day. And original malaria, which was suppressed 1 years back, for which he took the quinine, chloroquine, reappeared in the blood, and he developed a typical malarial feature. So this is quite common. And this happens. It goes from less important organ to more important organ. And this suppression is the result when you try to treat medicines with the stronger doses. And this concept he wants to explain over there. And then we'll finish one more paragraph if it is possible. No, we'll continue with it tomorrow because tomorrow we'll finish this chapter. It is not possible. We'll continue with this in tomorrow's session so that it will be better for understanding. So we have learned three conditions. What happens when two dissimilar diseases meets inside one human being, and we have correlated it with the allopathy. The first condition, if original disease is stronger, it repels the new one to enter. If original disease is weaker, the new one comes, temporarily remains, and suspends the older one, and when it finishes its course, the old one reappears. And third, when two dissimilar diseases of equal strength comes inside human being at a time, they appears at two different places in one human being. Sometimes produce another complex disease over there. So either a complex or a double complex disease that will going to happen in such types of patients. So these are three conditions which we have discussed. Tomorrow we'll correlate and complete the chapter so that the concept becomes clear in our mind. And second thing which I want to tell, from today onwards, the evening session of Materia Medica will be at 8 o'clock instead of 8:30. It's not possible for me to do it at 8:30. So we'll start it at 8 o'clock. So here is one question. Homeopathic medicine works as like second case? No. Homeopathic medicine, how it works, that is the question after completing dissimilarity, Hahnemann explained, and that we're going to learn in further aphorisms. All three conditions are related with dissimilarity, not with similarity. Okay. So that's all for today, and be there at 8 o'clock at night for the Materya Medica session, not at 8:30, but at 8 o'clock. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you.